And we are live. Welcome to Silicon Valley Insider. This is Office Hours for Entrepreneurs and Startups. I'm Keith Koo, and this is where real practitioners answer real questions live. No scripts, no pitch decks, no fluff. Before we get started, everything you hear today is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing on this show constitutes legal advice, financial, investment, tax, accounting, insurance, or any other form of professional counsel. Our panelists are sharing general knowledge and their professional perspectives, but your specific situation requires your own licensed attorney, financial advisor, CPA, or qualified professional, etc. Just get that out of the way as a former banker. And with that, I want to introduce myself. I'm Keith Koo. I'm a lifelong resident of Silicon Valley in the Bay Area. I run a radio show called Silicon Valley Insider. I also do investment banking, and I'm also one of the partners of Guardian Insight Group, and we help all stages of companies, but especially startups. I'm going to then turn over the mic for each of the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Soyeun.
Hello, everybody. My name is Soyeun Choi. I'm a business and IP attorney based in the Bay Area, but representing clients globally, and I'm just happy to be here today. Thank you.
Henry. Thanks, Soyeun.
Hey, everybody. I'm Henry. I have a company called Unicorn Videos, which does video marketing for startups and tech companies and that sort of stuff, and amongst other things. But thanks for having me.
Great to be here. Everyone's being very, very humble, but Henry, marketing guru, commercial film, documentary, and commercial producer. So any questions you have around marketing, Henry's your guy. And Ed, over to you.
Hi, I'm Ed Ye, lifelong technologist since about 7th grade. My background is in business and engineering, so I straddle that business between them. I've probably co-founded about 9 companies. I've probably touched over 100 companies from an advisement and a technical aspect. So if today's topic is startups, I've been through a lot of them, and I've been on both sides of the table. So.
And I think that's great, Ed, to just remind everybody that in order to be an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley, there are successes, of course, but there's also a lot of failures, a lot of false starts. And so we're here to cover everything. Just to start off with, as I do expect, yes, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to drop it in LinkedIn or YouTube, and we'll pick up. If you want to be anonymous about your questions, find me on LinkedIn, Keith Koo, and you can drop your question into my DM, and I won't expose who you are, but we'll ask the question. So to kick it off, I did want to start with just some of the things happening around, and we're going to talk about it throughout the day. Vibe coding, Ed. Well, everyone's had experience with vibe coding, whether it's legal, whether it's on the marketing side, practitioner, or people diving into it. Ed, what is your some experience with people doing vibe coding?
Well, as a coder for 30 years, I mean, I have a natural predisposition to be a little bit snobby about coding. So when vibe coding, these instant apps started coming out, I really started poo-pooing it. So I'm old school. I'm a waterfall guy. I like design to build. But from a point of view of a startup that wants to get funding, to be able to put out an MVP used to take 2 to 6 months to just get an idea, get going. And you can do that in a weekend now. So I'm starting to lean toward accepting it as an MVP level, as an entry level into getting useful apps. I'm still not convinced it throws out production level code. I'm still not convinced it does DevOps well. I'm still not convinced it does QA well. So it can take you to a certain point, but I wouldn't trust my business on it yet.
It's a great comment, good feedback. Go ahead, Soyeun.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to, I think it'd be useful to define vibe coding just in case, just to be clear.
Sure.
I mean, someone else, not me.
Maybe Ed?
So all the LLMs now, all the big ones have the ability to help you to code. So if you do things like you connect it to Visual Code, you connect to another IDE, it can help you code if you give it description. Like there's 2 main thoughts of development. One is a waterfall and one is an agile. And most people don't do a pure instance of either. They come somewhere in the middle. So a waterfall design is you spend 40 to 60% of your time upfront speccing out your product, going through wireframes, iterating through the design process, and then you go to development. And Agile is kind of Wild West. You come up with a bunch of features. People take cards, they call them. You have a storyboard, and you work your way through and iterate quickly. So the last 10 years ago or so, Agile coding became very popular. And because people can go quickly, you can make mistakes and keep on iterating. But I think with vibe coding, I think it's leaning more toward waterfall, because the better your specs are, the better your app comes out. So you have to put more thought up front to code it. So all these coding helpers, coding apps, like my favorite is Codex, and like Google, Claude, and Anthropic all three have very good coders now. So you pipe in your specs, you pipe in your wishes, you pipe in what you want, and it throws out the code for you. It throws the back end, it can do database design, it can do front end design, and it gets something functional. And from there, 99% of the time, you have to iterate if you see things wrong, if the UI is wrong, if the functionality is wrong, buttons are in the wrong places. So you have to iterate to get to a point that you want. But it becomes very, very easy now. You could do it in hours to put out an app that is presentable. So to me, vibe coding is letting the machine do 95% of what people used to do.
So what are the things that it does wrong? Like, why is it not reliable or safe? Especially it's not safe, it seems. So like what is it not getting right? Is there like a lot of security issues or logic, or like what for the average person to understand?
So yeah, I'd like to think wisdom is still a useful feature that people have. That people have gone through 20 iterations of developing a product, know what security holes to go, what path you take on the DevOps side, what to put in front of your app for protection. And what I've seen so far, it'll do the bare minimum to get you what you want, but it won't get you to a point that you would want to put it out in production. So like you said, security, if you ask it to do a security pass, it'll do a security pass, but it won't know things about like Cloudflare. It won't know things about, it won't set up things like redundancy across multiple regions, things like that. So you have to have some wisdom to be able to tell it what to do to get to a point that is production ready. It won't tell you all these things. If you ask it, it's kind of like dating someone who doesn't talk a lot. So you have to drag things out of them. So unless you ask them for security, it's not going to do it. Unless you ask them for good DevOps, it's not going to do it. It'll kind of give you just enough to get going.
And now that we've got people teased up and the people using vibe code or wanting to use vibe code concerned, we're going to pause to talk more deep, because what Ed said is that 90 to 95% is great. It's the 5% that you don't know that's going to really mess up your plan. So we'll come back to that. We do have a guest, and I know they have limited time, so I'm going to bring them on stage so they can ask their question. Hey, Diana, how are you?
Hi, good to see you, Keith, and good to see you guys.
Yeah, and why don't you give a quick intro into who you are and your company, and then you can get to the question.
Great, I love that. I'm Diana. I'm CEO and co-founder of Opto AI, which is an AI financial coach for couples. And our mission is really to help couples get stronger alignment, communication, and planning. And we always say our vision is that no kid grows up seeing their parents fighting about money. So we're really trying to go transform people's relationship with money and each other. And my question goes to the topic that was on the slide about getting early customers. And I think with the boom of AI and vibe coding, one tension as a founder we feel is that there's a higher expectation for faster growth traction and metrics sooner, because you can just ship things in minutes or hours instead of over a longer time. In our work, we're really trying to build a proof of concept on deep transformation, on really changing, like meaningfully impact relationships, meaningfully impact people's finances. So what advice do you have for founders who are feeling this pressure because things can be coded and shipped so much faster, that we want to still leave time to prove out the value that we're able to really deliver to customers. And we might feel some of that tension when we're trying to approach investors or people coming alongside us who just want to see things a lot faster.
Um,
Oh, go ahead, Henry.
yeah, who's that for? Me?
We'll go with
Yep.
Henry first. And then
Oh yeah, sure. First of all, I mean, that sounds like a cool product because I think that's definitely, I know for most, or what I've heard is that a lot of divorces are money is at the center of it, and it is a very important thing to understand. I feel like one, when it comes to AI, from my own experience, is like it's challenging because there's so many ways to apply AI and you kind of don't know what to focus on. And so for me, the way I think about it is just using AI to like optimize for, especially in your case, more humanity. So like how could you use AI specifically on your product or the flow of the customer journey where like they have a superior experience, because of AI? Because right now it's still a very human service and very mission driven product that you have. So therefore, like actually, even though you have this pressure to get numbers and stuff, I think if you want real momentum, you first have to optimize for like your core first customers are just like insane fans, like they're like raving lunatic fans. And that's if you could figure that out with like 10 people or 100 people or 1,000 people, then you really can do it for millions. And then the momentum will build like a hockey stick, because then you can do all the other tactics and use your AI as a tool to grow and scale. One thing I would say specifically for you when I was hearing you talk is I would say maybe go after nonprofits, find or organizations where like they already have an interest in helping the financial well-being of people, and then you can offer it as a value add, and then number one, they're like literally already doing the work of finding your customers, and then it looks good for investors because then you can list these organizations as well as their customer base becomes your customer base, and so now you can show more numbers in different ways that than just like direct installs or whatever, that sort of stuff, which is more time consuming and costly and stuff. And then so yeah, and then also because nonprofits, they're kind of geared towards promoting things. So if they really love your product and you're really helping their people, like they're gonna spread it out. And so I feel like as an early founder, that would be in your situation might be one of your best like find those kind of people, or yeah, obviously content creators or influencers that are in that space, maybe more in the relationship space than financial space, or maybe both, I don't know, but yeah, that's off the top of my head.
thanks, Henry.
So Diane,
And
are you asking from a business process point of view or from a technical point of view?
I would say more of a business process point of view, and especially as we think about inviting capital partners, investors in, how to set the right expectations for managing expectations that things can just be shipped a lot faster, and there might be more pressure to have a certain measure of traction, even in our stage, which has been bootstrapping really at this point.
so I would say, Ed, did you want to address first?
No, I'm the techie guy. If you guys have techie questions, I'll answer techie questions.
I would say for early stage startups, especially before you have the conversations, getting up to the investor, getting up to capital, is that because AI, and I see questions, so we'll get to those questions in the comments, but because AI is relatively seen now as ubiquitous to get to an MVP, as we spoke before, whether you're vibe coding or not vibe coding, I don't know your situation, that being able to demonstrate A/B testing and whether you're able to get early adopters and usage patterns is really important. And that's even before you have those capital conversations, because the thing I fear about a lot of AI driven, quote unquote, AI driven kind of cause related or mission related, as Henry said, is that because AI is ubiquitous, a lot of it, there's no real moat. So the moat can be a lot of user adoption. That's where the community aspect comes in. So you build a community. But back to the capital raising question, seed and pre-seed is really hard. And that's why we think about friends and family first. And I know it's hard to ask friends and family for money, but that's where you usually start. then that gets your prototype, whether you're vibe coding because it's cheap or whether you have resources. And then from there, you see the usage, you see the adoption, and then you can start thinking about the capital stack. I mean, you should be thinking about the whole time, but that's kind of the natural progression of how you get to capital.
So Diane, is your base technology, is it going to be a one-on-one? Are you going to have counselors? Do you have a data set? Are you using general LLMs as your answer? I mean, how are you getting your interactions with your customers?
Yeah, currently we have an app, and we use one of the foundation LLMs, and then a lot of structured guidance and methodology on top of that to really shape it based on research done in relationships and money management. And so we're working right now on a content licensing deal with someone else who wants to be a part of this and really has expertise on the money coaching side. And the idea is that the AI coach would be an introduction, and then if you do decide, it could be really helpful for us to meet one-on-one with someone who is a deeper license on either marriage counseling, financial counseling, etc., that we would have a marketplace where we'd have those resources available to you to request through the app. But the idea is that it will at least provide a baseline conversation starter on what are critical conversations around money and relationships, that it actually helps just to have a third person in the room, even if that's an AI coach who's prompting you to have a better conversation. Because we want couples to work on communicating with each other. So a lot of it's more of reflection driving rather than prescription driving. So how do we get couples to reflect and share together rather than prescribing exactly what they should do?
So as Keith was talking about,
go ahead.
Anybody who bases their entire business, especially on the AI side, using foundational models does not have a moat. So unless you're hitting specific data sources, unless you have data sources like you're saying you want licensed data sets, and then you could drive your own small or large off that data set and it actually becomes authoritative. Sorry, I don't even know that word. There's not much you're offering them outside of going to an LLM. So you really have to focus on your data set. If you can build a trained model based on that, I mean, that's a selling point. If you go into a VC and angel saying, oh, I have my entire business based on a general LLM, they're going to laugh at you because you have no moat. You're just putting a lid on top of these other LLMs. So you have to think about your curation, your base data set, and your authoritative data set.
Yeah,
on top,
it's
on
good.
top,
And
go ahead. Go. Sorry, Diana. Go ahead.
Oh no, yeah, I think it's a great point too, and that is where we believe over time that because what we're trying to model is actually two different individuals and decision makers around financial decisions, that will become a really big differentiated data set over time too. Because a lot of times when we think about financial decisions, no one else captures how do households align on some of these biggest financial decisions about when do you buy a house, are you moving, are you having kids? And we hope that we can help build the smartest system because we can understand how two different people talk through some of these hardest decisions rather than just always seeing the end financial outcome. But we do need to invest more in building that up too from the start, Ed. So that's a great point. But yeah, go ahead.
Really, so the more that you can build your own fortress data set and use LLM against that, you become much more legit because of that.
Yeah.
If you're just going to a general engine and say, hey, what's a good age to have kids between two people or blah, 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 they could do that themselves. So why would they? You have to come to a point that they want to come to you because you're the expert.
Right. What I was going to add, just piggybacking on Ed and Henry, and then I'm going to bring in Soyeun, is that as we discussed, right now, a lot of people have quote unquote AI startups. And because of that, and because of vibe coding, a lot of the things that you're working on, and not speaking to you specifically, Diana, but just in general, is not necessarily a moat and not necessarily anything that a competitor couldn't do. So I think we talked about the community aspect. You actually brought up a good point where I think about something that you're doing would be really good for a referral network. So you'd bring in financial advisors, potentially marriage counselors, or marriage counselors specifically on financial advice. And then you don't have to carry all that yourself. And then the data you're collecting, as Ed mentioned, that becomes potentially unique IP in the way that you handle that data. And so that's where I think licensing is a potential as well. So I'm going to bring in Soyeun to think about more broadly than the app itself as a delivery mechanism on things you might be able to do with the business model and the data.
Hi, Diana. Yeah, actually, in listening to your venture, it made me think about how businesses can preserve that agility and at the same time have some peace of mind. And so I wanted to recommend, I'm legal, so a lot of legal works slowly, but there are some documents that are appropriate. For example, you can have a letter of intent, or you can have a short memorandum, and that way you can have like sort of like intermediate discussions. And what's great about having these written agreements is that you present the issue through these agreements, and so it's not taken so personally, you know what I mean? And if you have to make adjustments, then you adjust the agreements. And so there are a lot of times when timing, or there's like a little blind spot, and in order to preserve that relationship, whether large deliverables or if it's just a one-on-one kind of thing, then you just step in and say, I'd like to have a discussion. Maybe we can generate an LOI. LOIs are they're binding in that they are an agreement, but they're not really binding in that you are executing one with the intention of having people beholden to it forever and ever, and then sort of like the penalty, so to speak, should be drafted so they're light, you know what I mean? So that is something that I just wanted to recommend, because it's a good way to manage relationships, and one that we don't, you think like, oh, a legal document, it's going to be so, serious, so formal, but no, they don't have to be, you know what I mean? Like, they don't have to be. It's just a tool, and it's better to have those terms written down, because a lot of things slip people's memories, and then it's misremembered or misconstrued, or sort of like intentionally manipulated and reframed at your disadvantage. So it's good to have that written. Yeah. So that's what I was thinking about. I'm sorry.
That's really helpful. No, I appreciate that too, especially as we're really with thinking about even some of those referral distribution partners, especially like Henry was saying too. I think getting things in writing, and like you said, even just a draft of some of the other terms and like what could change or go wrong is really helpful, because you want to have the best case scenario. But then again, also going the full extent of a full legal document might not warrant the cost at our stage. So I appreciate that. So yeah, thank you.
Right.
Exactly.
And Diane, do you have any other questions for us?
No, I appreciate it. Thank you guys for your time and wisdom. Really appreciate it.
Okay.
Good luck.
To have you. And as mentioned, if you wanted to come on a future show, or if we have time now, if you want to come on now and we can evaluate it, just send me a direct message if you don't want to put a public comment in for the audience. So thanks, Diana. You can either hang out or you can drop back. It's up to you. So we do have a question to the team. I'm going to show it online. So a lot of AI startups are now focused on vibe coding and ultra-fast prototyping. But from a production operational perspective, rapidly generated systems can also accumulate hidden architectural debt very quickly. Do you think the industry is underestimating the long-term reliability, maintainability, and operational risks of AI-generated software? And where do you think the balance should be between speed and engineering discipline? I'm going to start off from an institutional perspective. As many people know, one of my roles when I was leading technology risks for a bank, we have something called model risk management, which banking in the United States is the only industry that has any guidelines or regulations still over governance of AI and models. And why I say that is the question is about, does the industry underestimate it? No, we all in the enterprise world absolutely know the dangers of vibe coding at an institutional level. That's why, as Ed was mentioning, when you have armies of developers, especially seasoned ones, also addresses why there's such low rates of entry-level jobs right now. We all use vibe. We don't just say vibe coding. We all use AI engineering tools in order to get stuff done faster. But the fact that you have seasoned and senior developers like an Ed, you will be able to detect where it's breaking. So that's that 95% of the work can now be done through automation. But that 5 to 10% becomes very, very important that you don't mess it up. And especially with some of the security issues that we're now seeing, which I'll get into a little bit later, you definitely want people who know what they're doing. So Vibe coding to me is a great way to launch a product, ideate, and get an MVP out the door. But institutions absolutely know the dangers in that. Large institutions. Ed, I'm going to throw this over to you.
So you're doing the iceberg thing, right? So the 10% you see is the UI. You have no idea what's underneath. So it's going to be really weird now that they're cutting all these entry-level jobs, and all these senior people are going to be more in demand because they have to do code review and they have to do all kinds of security reviews. And there's going to be a deficit in the future of people that are able to do that in the next 10, 20 years because nobody has an entry-level job to become a senior. So it's just the senior people, the architects, the security advisors, those are the people that you have to lean on for their knowledge. Anytime, I use vibe coding all the time, and every time it does an iteration, I still go through line by line to see what it writes so I understand what's going on. But if you trust the system, the code for you, you really have no idea what's going on underneath the covers, behind the screen, behind the curtain, whatever Wizard of Oz guy says. So you really put yourself out there for a lot of failure if you don't do it correctly.
Thanks, Ed. Another question. This might go to Soyeun. So I have a good idea. Also have the product. Do I need to register as a company now before approaching for early field trials?
Do I need to register the company? From a purely legal perspective, which means hyper paranoid, type A, neurotic, worried about you and your personal assets, the answer is yes. Because the reason any founder would be interested in establishing a company and then running the operations under the auspices of the company is it separates the liability from you to the company. And so if there's a chance for some sort of conflict, potential lawsuit, etc., your personal assets would be protected. So, like I said, the hyper protective answer is, yeah, you need to register as a company. However, the sort of cushion is that every attorney that you talk to who has experience will know that, part of the risk assessment is yours. Like, your industry, kind of like who the sharks are, what the pitfalls are. And so, if it's something that seems like, something that it wouldn't be too risky, then maybe you have a little bit of a runway. But I do highly recommend forming a company. So then you can sort of proceed with peace of mind.
And
Did you want to talk about preliminary patents if you have an idea that you think is patentable? It doesn't cost a lot of money and gives you a certain amount of time. Is that something you would recommend?
Oh, yeah, I would definitely recommend, yeah, absolutely, researching the types of IP protections that you might have. If you are aiming for patents, you want to do that research early because there are a lot of sort of like hurdles or considerations that pertain to novelty and newness. And so in order to guarantee or get a better perspective on the field and see if you're actually as new as you think you are to qualify for a patent, you do want to do that research early.
Plus, when you go to serious investors, seeing that preliminary patent gives you a little bit more gravitas.
That's absolutely true. Patents, trademarks, if you have copyrightable material, to have that registered as well, because then those are valuable assets. And so investors will want to see the, certification of those efforts.
Yeah, and we have a follow-up question from the same user. And before I say that, just Ed asked the question I was going to ask in general. Oh, wait, one moment. I know that people are having problems with LinkedIn Live for some. So if you have a problem with LinkedIn Live, jump to the YouTube stream instead or watch the recording. So definitely, I think the question of forming a company and or securing your intellectual property, which Soyeun's an expert in business formation and IP. You don't have, I would do both if you have the wherewithal, but I would definitely secure your intellectual property and get first acknowledgement that you're working on that if you have the ability to. The next question is also, my product is in the enterprise field after 18 years of enterprise experience. How do we approach the enterprise without actually building a support team for bug onboarding, etc.? How do we go about it? Is it possible? So sorry, I didn't see the DM part, but I'll answer the question because this is my background. So the thing about working with enterprises, and depending on where you come out of, if you're going into a regulated industry, so banking in the United States, outside of nuclear energy, is one of the highest, most stringent, we call it third-party risk or vendor risk, and where a lot of fintech and regtech, whatever you want to call it, they get stuck on in early stage is they have a product, but they don't realize that for me as a bank to evaluate your product, if you can't pass certain gates early on, it messes up the questionnaires that I give you, the surveys, and I'm no longer in an executive bank, but I'm just saying that what you have to do is you're a startup with a fintech product, because I don't know what your product is. You want to pitch that to me and you send me something and we're considering it. It has to go through a very, very complex, onerous process to be evaluated. If you mess up anything, especially data privacy, it is easier for me not to do business with you than to go through the hoops of trying to get you qualified as a vendor, because it could take me 6 months to 12 months. And I've seen that happen. So that's banking. Then there's automotive, there's healthcare, etc. So the best thing you could do if you have a early stage product in a regulated industry is to get advisors who know what they're doing. Get an advisor who knows that product life cycle, knows what it takes to actually get through to that. Because a lot of times, again, back to banking, we're never going to tell you why, because it's just easier for us to find your competitor or get someone that's not going to have to go through those hurdles. So that's number one. For institutions in general, there's large enterprise, there's medium enterprise, and then there's small, medium business. So if your product is for small, medium businesses and they have a lot more ability to, as Soyeun said earlier, risk management, all businesses are risk. The smaller businesses can accept risk easier than a large one can, from a thing that might take down operationally their entire business. So when you say you have an enterprise product without knowing what it is, something like a CRM may not be as mission critical as something that's running your payment system, for example. So I hope that helps. You can definitely DM me for more direct advice, but those are just some guardrails I wanted to put out there. And if anyone else, Soyeun or Ed or Henry, want to jump in, feel free.
If you had 18 years of enterprise, you know how cautious they are. Their butts are on the line. And you know how long the sales cycles are. I used to be in healthcare. Sales cycles, sometimes 2 to 5 years, sales cycles going in. So going in, like you said, going to a large company, I think you're going to be banging your head against a wall. Normally for small companies that are coming in, we want to get a partnership with a second or third tier player in that field so they can help co-develop the product with you, and you have a customer. They might even invest in you. You might not get a lot of money out of them, but it'll give you a lot of knowledge into the sales cycle, into that industry. So if you don't have partnerships yet, think of getting a good alpha customer that you want to come on as a partner.
Thanks. We're going to move on to another user, another question. Thanks for your questions, by the way. Very helpful. So such great insights. Thank you. Interestingly, I was just having a conversation with a cybersecurity expert on this just yesterday, and potential risks with vibe coding. Do we think this industry, cybersecurity, might grow in parallel with the world of rapid AI advancement?
Oh, 100%, or they're out of business. So they have, there's whole LLMs out there, whole agents that go through and help identify QA, security eyes your product. And all the cybersecurity, if they're going to survive, they have to go into that field, because they end up looking bad if they don't do that. And they take customers that don't have some type of good security wrap around them. It's just going to make them look bad. It's going to hit the news. It's going to make them look bad. They're like, oh, but we had Cloudflare. But Cloudflare right now doesn't do any code exams for you, but they have to be able to guarantee a certain level of service. So yes, I think they will have to go in parallel.
So recently, I totally agree with Ed. Recently, I did a show where I talked about Claude Mythos. Mythos was a new model that Anthropic said they were delaying and they're going to give it to the top 40 companies in technology to kick around to make sure. So what had happened is, and I'm not a proponent, I use cloud, but I'm not saying this is focusing on one versus another, that we used to say in tech that the complexity of our internal systems kept us safe from cyber attacks. And I used to work most of my career at Cisco Systems. And the challenge with that now is that because LLMs are ubiquitous and they can actually find flaws much faster than a human, now it becomes even more incumbent that the cybersecurity professionals really know how to close vulnerabilities versus just saying that because we're so complicated, nobody's ever going to figure out our spaghetti code. One of the things when I first started airing my show about 8-9 years ago was that the number one exploited software back then was a Korean version of Star Office, which most of you might be using in terms of Google Workspace, Google Mail, but it was an open source, or is an open source way to have all these Office products like a spreadsheet or Word document. So whoever in Korea modified it for a Korean users, because relatively small in a sense of a population, that was exploited and used extensively for all types of nefarious cyber activity. So now what Mythos is saying, and now all the other LLMs, is like, because you have 25-year-old code, 27-year-old code, that all those LLMs can scan an application, can scan a website and find out what all the vulnerabilities are that have been lurking there for all those years. And so that's why, to answer the question, yes, cybersecurity becomes more important. I've had cybersecurity experts 5-6 years ago saying that there's no way that AI could ever be better. Large banks get hit 50,000 times a day, attempted attacks, but you almost never hear of a bank getting taken down, a large bank, because of all the security measures behind it. That's all driven by automation and AI, because no human could defend against 50,000 attacks a day. So I hope that answered that question. Next one. Oh, I'll answer that later, but Ed, this one, current LLM fundamentally operate as a sequence prediction system over static token. This is a very technical question. Do you believe there's a theoretical ceiling for what transformer-based coding models can achieve in real production engineering without an explicit executable world model or runtime state simulation layer?
That depends how much of an artist you think you are. Most coders think they have some artist in them, and writing code is an art, which I kind of agree with. But if you are of the belief that almost every code that you can write has been written already, like how many times does someone have to rewrite a login screen? Probably not a lot. And we have 5 zillion examples of that. So if you think that most code has been written, LLMs will pick up most of the permutations that you're thinking of. If you're writing like kernel level stuff, machine code, things that have not had a pool of examples, then maybe LLMs are not going to get there. But if you're just using a high level language, which everybody does, I don't know anybody that writes machine code anymore, I think LLMs will do a pretty good job of coding what you want.
Good feedback. There's another question which is directed towards me. How do you think we can benefit from AI and M&A apart from the due diligence process? I mean, that's a very wide question on mergers and acquisitions. So certainly, I think that as the user is asking, AI and ML can definitely help with the evaluation of due diligence. Due diligence is a process we go through to make sure that a company is suitable to be acquired, and that is it's a very lengthy and expensive process. Other ways that AI can help M&A is things. I mean, I'm not going to just only stick to M&A deals, but in deal flow and deal processing, you now have the ability to use AI and ML in a very non-technical way to source out deals, to find potential deals that you're not even aware of. I mean, right now there's huge industries. When I say industries, there are people I'm meeting every day. I'm more of a middle market, but at the lower deal size, so people that want to sell dental practices, doctors who want to sell their practices, auto mechanics. That's all human to human right now in terms of like finding out who wants to sell and who's able to buy. And as I meet more and more people in this lower end space, because I'm just using it as a parallel example, that they're using automation now with agents. I know Ed and Henry have a lot of experience with that just in general, but you can actually use agentic AI to do a lot of your deal flow and a lot of things that your analysts do. So broader spectrum of deals, not just M&A deals. A lot of what you have humans doing can do a lot of the analytics behind it. And so the humans can then focus on sifting through all that information, finding out what the pattern matching is on what the agents return. There are things that I know that Ed and I are doing for Guardian Insight Group where, without giving too many specifics, Ed was able to find 2,000 leads on a very hard data set that isn't readily available. So those are just some other examples of how in deal flow AI can be used. Did you want to add to that, Henry? You're shaking your head, so.
Oh, I'm just listening.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I was just gonna say that was a good question because AI can definitely assist in that process. But when I was thinking, because it says apart from due diligence, but then when I was thinking about due diligence, then it's kind of it's unknown how AI could assist. Just because I know from a legal standpoint, like we have to have human eyeballs and brains on the process, which it seems like there is a way, like just to think about it, sort of like existentially, a way to streamline that process. But I think the issue is that the parties themselves and then the attorneys are responsible for every page that's reviewed, and that's something that cannot be surmounted by AI yet.
Yeah,
Anyway,
that's a
good
good
question.
point. Yeah, and we have a user who is apparently very well educated in AI, and this isn't a question; it's a statement. And what we'll probably do, which is questioning that they believe that there is a theoretical limit to where transformers hit on LLMs. It's funny because one of our good friends, Freedom Preetham, an AI scientist, you can look him up on LinkedIn. Last night, he actually wrote an article that he thinks it's near infinite, the ability for the scaling of AI in general. I'm not saying I believe that or not believe it. I'm just saying that is a direct response to this user's comment. So
It goes back to experience. I mean, there's certain parts. Some of the stuff you're talking about is not just coding. Some of it's DevOps, some of it's architecture. And it goes back to wisdom that AI can give you some advice, but there is always going to be some wisdom involved in setting up a system and starting a company. So in general, I agree.
all right.
Thanks to that user for such a well-articulated point too.
Yeah, they're obviously in this space, so it's good and it's helpful. And probably in a future panel, I'll ask Freedom to come on to ask the like really in-depth AI scientist level questions and the frontier models. That was also a good point that somebody made, is that a frontier model versus an LLM, it's very expensive to start a frontier model. That's where it hasn't been developed yet. And although the cost is still going down, just imagine the amount of effort it was to start OpenAI, Anthropic, Grok, Llama, DeepSeek, and Quinn. And the Chinese models were cheaper by Western standards, but still very extensive resources in time, money, and people. So,
I mean,
go ahead. Sorry.
So in the future, do you think LLMs are going to become more vertical specific or more general?
You're asking a question if I think LLMs are more specific?
Yeah,
or
I'm just
general?
putting it out there because if it's going to be vertical specific, then the cost goes down because your data set goes down.
Absolutely. We see that already now, right? I mean, if you use LLMs on a daily, I mean, I already see, the question is, in general, LLMs, when they first started, people don't realize that every time you asked a prompt, you were boiling about 4 liters of water every single time you hit the keyboard and wanted to ask what's the weather pattern for the next 7 days. So I already see when I use my LLMs after the history that it's using less tokens and responding faster for very specific because it has the data and it's trained on that already. So yeah, but I think the question, Ed, is for the vertical LLMs, is that an offshoot of the existing LLMs, or there's like an actual vertical LLM specifically for, say, auto mechanics?
But yeah, the front ends are gonna get smarter. They're gonna do distillation better, so the costs are gonna come down. So in general, I think the costs for frontier models eventually have to come down, especially on the inference level too.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Of course, technology always comes down. Even NVIDIA chips at $30,000 plus per GPU, we already see that there's others, competitors trying to break that space, right? So yeah, we know that technology always gets commoditized. I came from Cisco when, at the time, it was not yet commoditized on networking infrastructure. So absolutely, technology, my belief, it will always get commoditized, but there's always new innovation that becomes expensive at first. I was gonna throw a question to Soyeun in terms of the theme earlier of vibe coding. So you're vibe coding, Soyeun, or you're using AI, or you're starting a startup. In full disclosure, Soyeun is our business attorney for me and Ed. I imagine my fear is that people jump in, start a business, start a AI thing. They don't have the right legal protections in either some type of legal structure like an LLC. They don't put the right disclosures on the website. Specifically, like a lot of people I know trying to hit the mental health space. What are some of the Pandora's box of legal issues that could happen by not having the right guardrails?
Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. It's just like as varied as deep as your imagination. You know, think of the Kraken, or like the, you know, what's it called? The deepest, darkest point in the ocean. Which
Mariana,
is, huh? Go ahead.
Mariana Trench.
Yeah, very Trench. Thank you. And yeah, the shock of just imagining that like knocked the name out of my brain. And it's something that, you know, your attorney will lose sleep over, you know, like what are the issues out there? And the vulnerabilities are really the reason why they're sort of like unlimited is that it's really up to the public. You know, I mean, when I say public, I mean every single person that your company interacts with, you know, so that could be like a business partner. When I say the public, it's pretty, you know, unbounded. So one thing that you mentioned were disclaimers. And I think for each industry, it is good to get education on what kind of, representations you want to disclaim, right? For example, if you have a legal session, right, you want to disclaim this advice is not for you. It's just general. It's not specific. You should not have your own attorney. And that happens industry for industry. And, you know, for closer relationships, one sort of tool that I've been trying to use more vigorously, it meaning like all the time, are ADR provisions, clauses, alternative dispute resolution clauses, which force the parties into some sort of informal resolution and or then mediation, where each party will split the cost. And, you know, maybe things don't get resolved that way, but it serves two functions. Number one is it totally avoids like a surprise lawsuit. I shouldn't say it totally avoids. People can still file a lawsuit, right?
For any reason.
Yeah, for any reason. But if you have this agreement executed and you bring it to the judge, then the judge knows it has to be, you know, the contractual method has to be exercised first, you know, so it'll hopefully avoid surprise lawsuits. And then also, you know, it gives you a heads up for any flares that for future problems. You know, if you have a lot of people in the public or your contractual sort of partners are reaching out to you based on those clauses, then you know, the writing's on the wall. Maybe this relationship is slowly deteriorating. Maybe I have an issue with XYZ feature, you know. So there are certain ways you can try to civilize behavior. And that's all through that's why I was saying those early agreements are really important. And that provision is one key provision that you want to have because it directly tries to manage conflicts. Yeah. And disputes.
Yeah. And I think great advice. I think that back to the theme of how easy it is to get started now. Seriously, if it's never been a better time, if you have an idea, whether you're early career, mid career, or even as we had Jones Chan on last session, who is semi-retired former chief scientist at Power Bar, started a company. Never been easier to develop your product, especially if it's a software product. But my fear is that because people can jump into it so quickly, they're not actually thinking about protecting their personal assets, and they're also not thinking about the challenge of slapping a label on AI and not knowing what the disclosures are, what the challenges are. Remember, I started off this episode today just making sure people knew that we're not giving out any official advice. It's all information, educational purposes only. It could be as simple as that as well, but do seek out or consult your own attorney. And of course, if you needed one, we have Soyeun, or we can actually give you other recommendations as well. But just wanted to make sure that as you're starting out on your idea, especially if you have assets to protect, you should do that with a lot of insight and knowledge.
Yeah, and I do want to emphasize that there's no sort of like intention defense. You can't say, "Oh, this is my side hustle. This isn't really like serious." Like there's no that doesn't exist. And that's why at the beginning of this session, before we started, I was, sort of admitting to being charmed by the idea of vibe coding, because there are so many consequences and repercussions in terms of like how you deploy it. But unlike the legal field, like there's no vibe, right? That's the thing. Everything is precise and written. And so it's good to keep these sort of guardrails in place, because if you do get into a dispute, you can't default or defend yourself in terms of vibes or intention. The standard's the same.
Right.
What
You can't
about
blame your AI that they did it.
I was gonna say, what about like vibe coding? The T app, the guy that made the T app, and how all that private data got leaked because it was vibe coded, and he did like basically no security checks, and it's like literally the app was supposed to protect girls, and then their IDs and personal info is literally, all out there. Like, what kind of ramifications happen to a founder or somebody who rolls out a product like that, something like that happens?
Oh,
So go ahead, Soyeun.
no, you want to go ahead? I can.
Oh, we lost Henry. So I'll just answer it anyway. So whether you Henry's back. So whether you realize it or not, the United States has privacy laws. California has the most stringent privacy law in the entire world, followed by the European Union, and then in general, the United States and certain states. So California has the highest data protection law for personally identifiable information, which is Henry was saying. So anytime, even as a non-vendor, anytime you're in possession of personally identifiable information, you need to have custody over it. And certainly if you're selling a product, there are definitely regulations, laws, and even fines associated with the mishandling of that data. So the question Henry's asking is what happened to that vendor, that technology supplier, is that a couple things can happen. One is that the government can go after them directly. And two is everybody that was affected by them, whether they're notified or not, can possibly have a legal claim against that vendor for leaking their data. And that's why you see it like all the time. You might have had your hospital, oftentimes, unfortunately, it's in healthcare. Hey, your hospital had a data breach, your credit report, like even Experian, like, or Equifax, I forgot, like over a decade ago, had a major breach. You get a notification in the mail, it tells you what your options are. And so that's something that people really, really need to be very aware of. That's something that I focus on all the time, and Ed on the technology side, is that you want to architect your data handling correctly. Also, as a philosophical thing, if you're then working on a data product, like Diana is working on financial advice, if she's ever in custody of financial, personally identifiable information, you would want to seek out somebody that can help you architect your system so that very minimal data is ever revealed. One of the things I had to do at the bank was a new product solution, the internal bank people wanted to get an access to 1 million live customer records, and they had to go through me, and I'm like, well, why would you need 1 million live data records? And so we ended up masking the data records so that you can't actually get back to who that individual is. And then now we even have things called synthetic data, where you can use automation AI to come up with customer profiles. So now the question is why you even really need, as you're developing a product, why you even really need live or actual data. So it's a long conversation, explanation, but Henry, that vendor is liable for data protection laws.
Yeah, when you think about it, the triage is pretty intensive and, really stressful, because not only do you have to address the leak, you have to stop it. You also have to sort of redress the issue for, all of the information that was lost. You have to respond to the state agencies, and then, the litigants themselves. So it has to be a super coordinated effort, with a lot of moving pieces pretty much at the same time. And then, as as an added layer, the marketing, the messaging out to the public and the victims.
Certain fields have certain standards that you have to do just to get into the field. We're talking about PCI, HIPAA, things like that. And a lot of those are surveys, so there's a lot of fudge factors when people do a HIPAA or PCI engagement, but it gives you an idea as a founder. It actually gives you a blueprint of what you should be doing a lot of times. It gives you a lot of things that you probably haven't even thought about. So if you're in a regulated industry, even if you're not, I would think about looking at some of these requirements, especially HIPAA, that tells you where you want to encrypt, how you want to send data, who has access, remediations if the access gets broken. So those are nice ways to think about your data before something bad happens. And so, Soyeun, if you could write an ADR for me and my wife, that'd be great.
It'll help. It'll help.
Prenup/ADR would be great. Whatever you want.
We're still not giving legal advice, including Ed.
Call me.
We've only got a few minutes left, but we have one more question, more of a philosophical one. Do you think that humanity's use of humanoid hardware, like a robot, to build commodity everyday superhumans to overcome market job loss by strengthening humanity? I think the question is, do we think that creating robots to do commodity jobs actually strengthens the job market ultimately for humanity?
A lot of layers there. Yes, and yes. I mean, the way I'm not really for it, but there's no way we're not going to get to a point we need universal basic income. If 40 to 60% of jobs are taken away, there's going to be a revolution. People are going to be in the streets if they're unemployed. So there's got to be a safety net somewhere that these people, 40% of people losing their jobs. I understand technology cycle, creative, destructive jobs. I understand that. But the transition period is always painful. And people are going to be very, very upset if these predictions are true, that 70% of white-collar jobs are going to be automated. So yes, I think there has to be something that we have to help these people in the transition.
Yeah, I think there's been at least 4 industrial revolutions. I was reading about this a couple weeks ago, that during an industrial revolution, and then once universities became more prolific, that the people that are, for lack of a better term, obsolesced, so their jobs in mid-career are taken out, and the young people that are graduating at that time, those are the two most impacted economically and almost never recover. The people that are able to take advantage of the automation, so the people that have already graduated, already in jobs and early careers, or the people that can adapt, the people that are upskilled or trained, they flourish. So the only difference,
they're going to hollow out the entry level and mid level people, and those people are hosed.
Yes, for lack of a better term. And so the difference now is that with the rapid speed, we say that, like when we were back in the old days, we used to say in technology in Silicon Valley, we were running in dog years. So every 1 year calendar year was 7 years to innovation life cycle. There's now I see in articles that with AI, the advancement of AI is like 64x in a 12-month period. So I think it's what's yet to be seen is what is the actual impact when that much automation occurs at once, and how can humans adapt quickly to that automation.
Yeah, definitely interesting times.
Well, I want to leave this on an upbeat note. So although we're talking about automation and we're at our hour, I want to thank Soyeun, Henry, and Ed for being on today's show. We're going to try to do this more regularly. I know we have lots of scheduling, but we think this is important to at least share advice as people are thinking about their ideas. Kind of summarize today, we talked about vibe coding and the implications of it. Never been a better time to develop your product, but also you need guardrails. If you're going to use AI, definitely find advisors, mentors, or people that can help you not just create your product, but also think about the downstream effects, whether it's support, whether it's legal, whether it's disclosures, whether it's you handle data. And that we always are looking for ideas on topics and questions. So you can either DM me, Keith Koo, on LinkedIn. You can email our email address, info@svn.biz, and you can follow us so that you'll know when we're live again. And I want to also just remind you one more time that this is all for educational, informational purposes. Go consult with professionals if it's legal, financial, tax, or regulatory matters. And we will see you on the next one. So thanks a lot, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Are we off?